The settlement of the Azores archipelago was pivotal to the Portuguese Empire, as these islands provided essential support for future long-distance voyages across the Atlantic. During the early years of their discovery in the 15th century, few were willing to relocate to the remote and uninhabited islands. It was impractical for a country with 1 million people to lose inhabitants. Consequently, the Azores' initial settlers came from various parts of Europe, including Portugal, Flanders, Italy, and beyond. Among the key figures was Jos Van Herter, a Flemish nobleman who played a crucial role in convincing his compatriots to join the Portuguese colonization efforts. His leadership established a strong Flemish presence in the Azores. In this video, we will thus explore the beginning of the colonization efforts in the Azores and the impact that European men, foreign to Portugal, had in its early empire era. Portugal's first encounter with an Atlantic island occurred in 1336, when Portuguese explorers, ordered by King Afonso IV, reached the Canary Islands. Although they initially explored the archipelago, the right of conquest was eventually granted to Castile. In the early 15th century, the Portuguese began discovering new islands, focusing on the Madeira and Azores archipelagos. Settlement efforts followed, adopting the model of lordship and captain donatory. This system was established during King Duarte's reign, when he granted the lordship of Madeira to his brother, Prince Henry the Navigator. Similarly, Duarte entrusted the Azores to the Duke of Viseu, another title held by Henry the Navigator, who was responsible for appointing captains donatory for each island. It wasn't until the reign of King Manuel I that the islands were formally incorporated into the crown. The captains donatory played a critical role in populating and developing these islands, which was vital for Portugal's burgeoning maritime empire. Settling the islands was challenging due to their isolation and distance from mainland Portugal, yet the promise of wealth and opportunity attracted settlers, including merchants seeking economic prosperity. For some islands, such as São Miguel, initial settlement efforts were insufficient. To address this, the crown forcibly relocated degradados, exiles and criminals, to São Miguel during the 1440s to ensure its habitation. Over time, however, the Azores became an essential waypoint for Portuguese ships returning from expeditions in Africa and beyond. The fertile land of the Azores made settlement possible, but it took nearly 3/4 of a century for all 9 islands to be inhabited. The eastern group, including São Miguel and Santa Maria, was settled first. Ilha Terceira, part of the central group, was granted to Jacome of Bruges, a Flemish nobleman, by Henry the Navigator. The central group's remaining islands were settled in the latter half of the 15th century. Faial and Corvo, however, only gained permanent residence during King Manuel I's reign. The House of Viseu, instrumental in Portugal's maritime expansion, attracted numerous foreign sailors, including Genoese, Venetians, and even Danish seafarers. Among the key relationships fostering such progress was the enduring bond between Portugal and the Netherlands, strengthened over centuries through trade, shared knowledge, and strategic marriages. One of the most pivotal unions occurred between Isabel of Portugal and Philip the Good of Burgundy, a marriage that solidified ties between the two peoples. Isabel, the sister of Prince Henry the Navigator, brought her influence to bear on fostering collaboration in navigation and shipbuilding. This relationship underpinned the creation of the prototype for the 15th century caravel. Portuguese and Flemish masters worked together on its design, blending their respective traditions and innovations. The Flemish also sourced wood from Madeira Island to build their arches. Flemish influence extended notably to the Azores, particularly the central group of islands, where many Flemish settlers arrived. Around 1450, Ferdinand van Olm led the first wave of Flemish settlers to Terceira. In the same year, Jacome de Bruges was appointed as the island's captain, but among the Flemish settlers, Jos stands out as the most significant figure. Despite concerns that some Flemish might remain loyal to the Duke of Burgundy, Dustra and his followers pledged their vassalage to the King of Portugal, prioritizing the crown's interests over those of any noble house. Their allegiance and diligent work helped integrate the Flemish settlers, who soon started having Portuguese surnames, into the Portuguese realm, strengthening the kingdom's hold over the Azores and furthering its maritime ambitions. Unlike contemporaries such as Danoli or Jacome de Bruges, who lacked noble birth, Jos Van Herter descended from an established lineage. He was the second son of Leo van Hurtere, Lord of Hagebroek in West Flanders, and inherited the lands of Morim, a title befitting his noble heritage. Early in his life, he served Duchess Isabel of Burgundy, which placed him in close proximity to the burgeoning maritime ambitions of Portugal. By the mid-15th century, Portugal was actively exploring and settling the Atlantic islands. Inspired by these voyages, Jos Van Herter embarked on his own journey in 1465 to Faial, accompanied by a group of fellow Flemish adventurers. At this time, only the islands of São Miguel, Santa Maria, and Terceira were inhabited. Portugal had permitted the Flemish to search for metals in the uninhabited islands, likely as part of a broader strategy to develop its Atlantic territories. It is believed that Jos and his compatriots were encouraged to join this effort by Portuguese figures at the court of Isabel of Burgundy and Philip the Good. Like many second sons of noble families, Jos sought to carve out his own path and legacy through exploration. The expedition to Faial did not yield the riches the Flemish were hoping to find. However, Jos established a vital connection with Fernando, the second Duke of Viseu, gaining his trust and favor. This relationship enabled Jos to organize the colonization of Faial. In the context of the ongoing conflict between Flanders and France under Louis XI, Jos likely promised the peasants who joined him a chance to escape war and own land in the Azores. This promise attracted settlers to the new colony, despite the challenges of life on an uninhabited island. In 1468, Jos married de Breitz de Macedo, a noblewoman from the influential house of Viseu, further strengthening his ties to the Portuguese nobility. He was appointed captain of Faial, cementing his leadership role in the settlement. In 1470, more Flemish settlers arrived in the Azores, including Willem van der Hagen, another nobleman fleeing the wars in Flanders. Van der Hagen, who later settled on São Jorge, introduced the cultivation of woad, which became a valuable commodity for the Azorean economy, particularly on Faial. Jos Van Herter became a knight of the House of Viseu in 1484, a significant milestone that marked his enduring relationship with the Portuguese nobility. His success in settling Faial, which began with the establishment of Horta, played a critical role in his rise to prominence. The settlement of Horta in the 1460s quickly became a model of colonial success. By the 1470s, when the Duke of Viseu passed away and his widow, Duchess Beatriz, reorganized the governance of Portugal's overseas territories, Faial was left untouched due to its flourishing condition. Meanwhile, many of the islands of the Azores and Cape Verde had reforms. This was a testament to the effective leadership of Hurtere, whose efforts had transformed the island into a prosperous and stable colony. Hurtere's success stemmed from his ability to integrate his Flemish settlers into Portuguese society. He skillfully divided the lands among settlers, ensuring equitable distribution and impeding conflict. His governance was marked by fairness, and though settlers had the right to appeal to the Duke if disputes arose, no such complaints were ever recorded. His leadership not only maintained harmony, but also fostered a strong sense of community. Valentin Ferdinand, a German engraver and writer who lived in Portugal in the late 15th century, described Faial as a Flemish island where nobody spoke Flemish, underscoring the settlers' successful assimilation into Portuguese culture. In the 1480s, Duchess Beatrice focused on settling the remaining uninhabited islands of the Azores. In 1482, Hurtere requested and received the captaincy of Pico, the island neighboring Faial. Though documentation about the settlement of Pico is scarce compared to that of Faial, Hurtere's efforts were reportedly successful. During his life, he was able to pay large dowries for his 3 daughters' weddings, an uncommon achievement for the era. He also secured marriages for his sons and daughters with other families who settled different islands of the Azores. Despite this, historical records suggest that his wife, de Bright de Macedo, may not have loved him during their marriage. Hurtere died in 1495, leaving behind considerable wealth. His wife's 1527 testament expressed regret for mismanaging the wealth Hurtere had left behind, highlighting the magnitude of his riches. Hurtere's leadership also had a lasting cultural impact. Over time, the Flemish identity of the original settlers faded as their descendants fully integrated into Portuguese society. By the time of Hurtere's children and grandchildren, the Flemish origins of the settlers were regarded with exotic curiosity, as they had come to view themselves as entirely Portuguese. This successful integration was a direct result of Hurtere's vision and governance, which not only ensured the prosperity of the settlements he established, but also laid the foundation for a harmonious and unified community. In the following century, Faial continued to attract settlers, evolving from a peripheral island to a key component of the Portuguese crown's strategy. The descendants of the original settlers, inspired by the pioneering spirit of their ancestors, ventured to distant lands across the Portuguese Empire, particularly in the Indian Ocean. Faial's contributions to the empire's economy became significant, with its wheat and woad production playing vital roles. However, the island's greatest strategic value lay in its role as a bulwark against piracy and enslavement, safeguarding the Portuguese realm. Each year, a large armada from Portugal would pass by the Azores to escort the valuable naus returning from India to the mainland. Similarly, Spanish galleons from the Americas often docked in the Azores en route to Spain. This made Faial and its neighboring islands pivotal in maintaining the security and economic stability of the Iberian empires. Not long after, the establishment of the Diocese of Angra brought the first institution to encompass all the islands. The legacy of Jos Van Herter, his wife, and the early settlers endures as a testament to their remarkable achievement of building thriving communities in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean over 500 years ago.